Hello, good evening. I am Ajit Jha, CEO of Power Pixar channel. And in today's Public Global, I wanted to focus on this crude and arrogant display of, public power by President Donald Trump. And I wanted to start with these images that you have been seeing, most of you, of 104, what the Americans are calling illegal immigrants that they have sent in a C-17 plane back to India. It's a U.S. military C-17 aircraft which is carrying these 104 deported Indian nationals, and they are mostly from three states: Gujarat, Narendra Modi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's state, is taking the cake, along with Haryana, and number three is Punjab, and a few from Maharashtra as well as Uttar Pradesh. What is shocking? It's not that this has happened for the first time. Illegal immigrants, as the Americans call them, have always been, say, at least there are numbers since 2009. They have been sending, we have records since 2009. Our External Affairs Minister Jai Shankar gave figures of that. But what is shocking about the way that these 104 Indian nationals, Indian citizens have been deported is, the way they were chained and handcuffed. They were like almost as if they are quote unquote terrorists. And they were sent by a military plane, not a civilian plane. For the 104 people, there was just one toilet and was a 40-hour journey, one of the most inhuman sort of ways of treating human beings in today's age. And the way the Trump administration is going about it, making a spectacle of it, making a sort of all symbol, no substance, totally sort of a white, wacko, racist administration, the way it is carrying on this right from the time of the US campaign, the way Trump has been talking about immigrants. If you remember his campaign where he talked about, some immigrants from some other countries in Ohio sort of eating cats and dogs, and Americans were so embarrassed, mainstream Americans. And it's the same sort of racist attitude that Trump continues with in the way they are treating this deportation. In a very nice article, an American professor has argued that, look, this is just a lot of bombast and nothing the Trump administration is going to achieve in the long run, because there are some estimates that over 10 million sort of, again, to use that term, illegal immigrants are there in the US. They're claiming that about 7.5 lakhs are Indians who have been living there for years. And the ones that have been sent right now, the 104, it was very easy for the Americans to sort of return them. One reason was many of them had just arrived at the Mexican border and they were trying to cross, and therefore it was easy, for the security forces, the customs officials there, to nab them and to bring them back. And of course, the ordeal was absolutely inhuman. But the tough part is identifying those 7.5 lakh, and then they have to face a judge because they have been living in that country for a long, long time, and they have been living in different states of United States. Not all of them are Republicans, so there might be court cases, and the capacity of an American administration, how many illegal immigrants can they send back, that itself, um, according to one American who specializes on the issue, might be as long as 10 years. In fact, he pointed out that one reason illegal immigration is so high in the U.S. is because American businesses need them. In states like California, states like Texas, in the border states, and actually the truth is all over America. Uh, where the minimum wages is supposed to be around $15. Many of these people, they work in farms, they work in agriculture, they work in all kinds of industry like construction and hospitality and others, and they are paid a miserable sort of wage of $7 or even less, and they survive on that, and that helps American business. In fact, the argument is that most American businesses will stop functioning if the entire quote unquote illegal immigrants, as they claim, are returned in one shot. Tomorrow, the whole American sort of businesses will just collapse. And because they end up making huge profits because of this, people crossing across the border, especially from Mexico and Latin America, from all over the world, but especially from Latin America, South America. In fact, smaller countries like Guatemala and some of the other um, Latin American countries, very small Latin American countries south of Mexico, their numbers are almost as high as Indians. So, in terms of illegal migrants, so this has been going on for decades, and everyone knew about it. People were paid cuts. The immigrant officials were paid money. There was a whole network that was created, and the reason was American businesses, as I said, basically survived on these. And the official reason is because the process of legal migration is so slow. In fact, the argument is that the Clinton era uh, applications from Latin America, Bill Clinton, when he was the president, actually, that was the time when I was a student in California, in Los Angeles at UCLA. So that was the time the applicants who put their applications then, their sort of legal papers have started moving around now. Imagine, this is almost, we are talking about early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. That period applications are being processed today. So there's almost like a 2 decades long gap, more than 2 decades long gap in getting this sort of immigration process through. And as a result, businesses have been relying on illegal immigrants. But none of this Trump has considered. He has not even thought about what kind of impact it will have on American business, on the American economy. He thinks the moment these illegal migrants move out, all the Americans will end up getting a job. And that is not true, because I doubt if any of the Americans, especially his MAGA voters, who are essentially whites, and half of them are probably as racist as he is, that they will work for such low wages. So you will have a strange situation in the country where the supply of labor will be very low and businesses will suffer, especially those businesses, as I pointed out, which do not rely on heavy software. As I said, hospitality industry, agriculture, construction, and those sectors where a lot of manual labor is required. So the entire the way the American administration is doing it is purely trying to satisfy the MAGA voters, purely making a spectacle, show off. See, we are throwing out these illegal Indians out of America, as I promised. So the whole thing is just display, just creating a spectacle of arrogance, of American superpower. It reminds you of how the colonials would treat us Indians exactly the same way. In fact, if Trump is a symbol today, he's a symbol of neo-colonialism of the worst type and racism of the worst type. And not that Americans are not going to fight against it. In fact, many of the states have already begun process. Protest movements have begun. But the thing is that for the next 4 years, you have the Trump administration, and it is not only this issue, the issue of immigration. The other big issue that that Indian businesses are going to face is this whole business of tariffs. If you remember, when Trump came, he came with a lot of bombast saying he'll sort of bring about 60% tariff reduction against China, 25% tariff reduction against Mexico, 25% against Canada, and 10% against the other countries. If you see what has happened, he has reduced that 60% of tariff reduction that he talked about during his campaign down to 10%. And in fact, the Chinese have already begun strong negotiations with him on that. And both Mexico and Canada, he has given them a 1 month's reprieve. Now he's going to sort of negotiate with them. So you can see that all that bombast and all that, big talk during campaign to get the votes of the MAGA voters on his side is actually not working on the ground, and it will be very tough for him to get any of this done as he claims. But soon, Prime Minister Modi is going to this month itself meet President Trump, and at that time, uh, right before this meeting, if you look at the budget and if you look at some of the recent policy changes, India is likely to cut tariffs on 30 products already before Prime Minister Modi is going to meet President Trump, because of the threat of the imposition of tariff on Indian exports. And these are on luxury cars, on bikes, on several other products. They are reviewing luxury cars, solar cells, as I pointed out, uh, and on chemicals, on high-end bikes, on on quite a few of these items. And what they are doing is uh, it is an attempt to counter Donald Trump's growing tariff actions. So the government is reducing these tariffs, as I pointed out. In the latest budget, you would have seen quite a few of that taking place. And yet, to show as if to cover up, they are imposing additional agriculture infrastructure development cess, AIDC, an alternative tariff on several items. The peak import tariff has been cut almost from 150% to 70%. So it's halved. And the average tariff has gone down between 11% to 13%. So I could give you a list of the entire sort of tariff cuts that are being planned, but that will just become a laundry list. You'll soon hear, if you just look at the budget, you will know what is happening. But what is the point here? The point here is that for the first time, an American president and an Indian prime minister is going to meet in the US, and the entire meet seems to be like between two unequal countries. Here is a country which exports capital, America. Here is a country, India, which exports labor. So the thing is, if maximum productivity should have taken place, there should have been free mobility of capital and labor. Remember that famous theorem we studied in college, the Stolper-Samuelson theorem, which used to argue that if you have total factor a free mobility of capital and labor, you will have highest efficiency. But that doesn't happen. Capital keeps exporting itself freely in all the developing countries, and it is precisely from developing world the labor that moves to countries like US and other developed countries like Europe, Japan, and others. That's where they put, the national boundaries are put, and they decide whether you're going to be a legal migrant or an illegal migrant. Now, the whole history of migration has had both. After all, the truth is, when Europe ended up, let's say 200 years ago, moving into America, which was almost at that time a virgin terrain, that was complete illegal migration. Did the Europeans ask the Native Americans at that time, would you please let us come into your country? Did they get their passport stamps for legal migration? The whole history of American migration is actually a history of illegal migration. Much more, the legal migrations actually only started in early last century. But the way, I am not sort of advocating large scale illegal migration, but what I'm pointing out is the way it is being treated. As I pointed out, we have right from 1965 onwards, especially from 2009, we have figures of how many quote unquote illegal migrants had moved back to India. And during the Obama administration, even during the Biden administration, the numbers were high. Today, what has happened is only 104. But the argument is that about 7.5 lakh Indians are illegal migrants. And that is what the threat Trump will hold in front of Modi. And at the same time, imposition of tariffs. Therefore, India is already cutting tariffs, as I said, almost on 30 items, and reduction is like 100 from 150% to 70%. So it's almost as if Mr. Modi, when he goes and meets President Trump, he's already starting on a lower wicket. In the past, when meetings took place, even when Prime Minister Modi went and met Biden, or before him, Obama, that was not the case. It was as if two political equals are meeting. When we became a member of the Quad, which was, of course, in the past, but when we became a member of the Quad along with Japan and Australia, US and India, we were almost like a very important member of that military alliance which Americans were using against China. But in this meeting that Mr. Modi is going to have with President Trump, India is already playing a secondary role. And that is what is very shocking. In fact, Mr. Modi should take a cue from our former Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, when she was forced in 1971 by this Kissinger and Nixon sort of combine. If you remember, the Seventh Fleet coming and threatening India, and she fought back. That should be the model with which Mr. Modi should talk to President Trump as a political equal, as a leader of a sovereign nation, and not go there to just satisfy the whims and fancies of this person, of this new president of America, who is perhaps the worst president America has had in its history. Obviously, the kind of changes he's going to bring about globally is something that people are worried about. People are already talking of similarities when Hitler came to Germany, and fascism came in Italy, and partly even in Japan. People are already sort of analysts. In fact, I have been reading American newspapers and journals which are raising these issues. Americans themselves are worried about the role Trump is going to play in the way all his dreams of this sort of arrogance of power, but on the ground, it is not going to help America. So let me come back to the issue of this debate that I started today. This is that the next batch of Indians that are going to be identified, at least Mr. Modi should put pressure on Trump not to chain them in these military planes, with almost like as if they are terrorists, and sort of let them go through this inhuman treatment that they went to, because that is something we Indians don't want to stand up to. After all, they are our citizens. They are sort of legal Indian citizens. And no American, when an American gets killed somewhere in the world, the whole of America starts acting as one. Similarly, if an Indian is being mistreated, if an Indian is being sort of threatened, if an Indian is facing inhuman acts, we as a country must protest together. And so should the Prime Minister and External Affairs Minister. Thank you very much.